All right, I'm back to answer just the last few asks I currently have in my inbox for the week. Let's see, first one. It's unreal to me that people ship Daryl and Leah. I can still get Daryl and Carol, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. People ship who they're going to ship. Some of the ships in the show are really weird to me too. People shipped Beth and Merle. People shipped who are some of the other kind of strange ones? I don't know. Yeah, I understand what you mean. Like, I guess at least Daryl and Leah, they started out being kind of cute if you weren't shipping him with anybody else, but it just got really toxic. So to me, it's odd that they would ship them when it is toxic, but people do stuff like that all the time. So people have strange proclivities when it comes to who they want to be together. But, it doesn't really matter because Leah's dead, so they can't get together anymore. All right, next one. What do you think the purpose is of making Dead City in a way later timeline than Daryl Dixon and The Ones Who Live? We don't actually know how long a time it's been, so it may not be as long as we think, but actually me and my fellow theorist were talking about this probably more than a week ago, and we were trying to decide if, because in Dead City, we see Maggie, we see Hilltop, we don't see anybody from Alexandria, and that was a little bit strange. I mean, other than the fact that this is kind of Maggie's spinoff, and, outside the show, technicalities and stuff. In the show, it's a little weird that we don't see anybody and she doesn't talk about anybody. And so people were wondering if, has Beth already returned at that point? Is she at Alexandria with Daryl? I mean, if that's the case, then that's why they didn't show that, because it would have been giving things away. On the flip side, I actually wonder if they haven't returned yet. If, even though it's a few years in the future, I mean, Rick and Michonne, they took several years to get back, and it could be total conjecture, but even if we're saying like that Dead City was 2 years on from when Rick and Michonne returned or something, maybe Daryl and Beth really still aren't back, and Carol, maybe they're still in Europe. I don't know. There's a lot of possibilities, so we're not really sure what the purpose is. We would be conjecturing about anything. But I think there's a lot of possibilities, and I think it does have to do with the timeline. It does have to do with, Beth's return, and, when they first aired Dead City, certainly we didn't know how things would turn out with Rick and Michonne, so they wouldn't have wanted to give that away. So I think it does have to do with wherever they're going with the story and whatever the timeline is. So you do got to wonder, though, if Dead City is way far out from The Ones Who Live, why wouldn't she have asked Rick and Michonne for help instead of Negan? It almost makes me think that maybe Maggie left. I mean, the beginning of Dead City, Maggie left and Rick and Michonne weren't back yet. And I know that there are things that suggest that it was further out than that, but the fact is we just don't know. Even though Herschel looked a lot older, we don't really know how many years have passed. They didn't tell us how old he was, and it's very common to get older actors to play a younger age, especially when you're talking about kids and teenagers. So they might not mean for him to be as old in the show as that actor is in real life. And yeah, we don't know what the timeline is. So to answer your question, I think it has everything to do with them not wanting to give spoilers, and it has everything to do with where they're going with, whether it's the CRM war or if it's some other entity that they're going to have a big war with, just trying not to give things away, but also setting things up for a future timeline, but they were also trying really hard not to spoil anything. So beyond that, anything more specific than that, I really couldn't say. We just kind of have to wait and see how things unfold. Hi, just sharing a thought here. So I was thinking about Rick-Beth parallels, and I've had a thought I've never had before. You probably have, LOL. But I never realized that before the virus happened, Rick was in a hospital, and his family obviously knew he was alive in that hospital, but then Lori, Carl, and Shane thought he lost his life in the hospital, just like the group knew Beth was alive in a hospital. And then they thought she died in the hospital. Like, it's so obvious that they repeat Rick's story with Beth in every detail. LOL. We can also add that when Shane was with Rick in the hospital, he couldn't carry him out, so he just had to leave him like the group had to leave Beth behind. Yeah, absolutely. That's 100%. And, I've wondered that before, too. I think it's a lot of things. Like, we have always assumed that when he put the hat on her and called her the new sheriff in town, that meant she would be a leader. And I do still think that's true. I think whatever group she's with, she's definitely going to be a leader. She's definitely going to be stronger than she was before, and all of that. But it also, in a more simpler interpretation, it might have just been to show that she was going to get Rick's arc. She was gonna, her storyline was gonna follow that template, and it was a way to foreshadow that. So yeah, I 100% think you're right. And then of course, Rick wakes up after, it's also mirrored in the fact that in 510, Rick says it's been 3 weeks since Atlanta, and that's when the music box wakes up. So she woke up after 3 weeks. And Rick, it has been confirmed by people who asked Kirkman that Rick was in a coma for 3 weeks. So you guys, there's just, again, you can say that we're crazy about some things, or that we read too much into some things, but when all the stuff you just said right here, right? Rick was in a coma for 3 weeks, then woke up. They thought he was dead. He was not. He was alive. He was back in the hospital. I also think it's important that Lori thought he was dead, but she didn't actually know that he'd been left in the hospital. So he was back in the hospital, and she almost didn't know he was there. And in her case, yeah, it was because he thought she was dead. But they have a pattern for doing that. At the prison, Maggie was looking for Glenn when the prison went down, and she was looking on the bus where she left him, but he was actually back at the prison, and she didn't think to look back at the prison. So that's one of the reasons I think Beth ended up back at Grady, and Team Family would have never thought to look back at Grady for her. Like, why would she be back there? But she was. You know what I mean? It's just kind of a pattern they follow. And anyway, I kind of interrupted myself there, but what I was saying is that he was in a coma for 3 weeks, then he woke up. His family thought he was dead. He was not. He had to leave. He did find Morgan, which is why a lot of us think that Beth might intersect with Morgan in some way. And anyway, then he went and found his family, and there was a reunion. And then after putting the hat on Beth, everything you just said, that she had a very similar arc to Rick. And then in 510, Rick says, it's been 3 weeks since Atlanta, and then the music box, which we know represented Beth on like 5 different levels, wakes up exactly 3 weeks later, exactly like Rick. I mean, there's just no way that's a coincidence, okay? There's just no way that happens on accident, or that Gimple does that for no reason, or that he accidentally does that without realizing he did. I mean, guys, no freaking way, okay? So yeah, it's perfect the way that you laid it out. It's 100% true. She has Rick's storyline. And then Rick repeated the same storyline too, because, maybe no hospital, but he fell into the water, the bridge, and Michonne thought he was dead and then went and found him. So I think that's going to be a little bit repeated with Beth too. Think of it this way. Once Michonne learned that Rick was alive, she went looking for him and eventually found him. I honestly think something like that could be the case with Carol and Daryl. Because I've said before, if Carol and Daryl are going to hop on his bike at the end of season 2 to go to Europe somewhere, chances are they're looking for Beth. Chances are they learn she's alive, have some idea where they are, and go looking for her, just like they did in season 5, just like Michonne did for Rick. So I think we're going to see something very, very similar. And that's not to say that we won't hear anything about Beth and Daryl Dixon season 2. We might actually see a lot of her, but I also think that at the end of the season, they're not necessarily going to end up in the same place at the end of the season, and he might actually go looking for her again. That would just make sense because they set up the template that way in season 5, and I think that they have to repeat that in order to fulfill the symbolism. So, yeah, anyway, I'm rambling again. Moving on. Thank you for that. All right, last ones. I'm really going to miss Pollyanna. She's such a fantastic actress, an amazing person to be around. I'm sad that she's gone, but I'm hoping this won't be the last we see of her. I have a hunch we'll see more of Jadis in Beth's story. Yeah, I've thought about that too, actually. We've seen plenty of Jadis calculating and dark side, and we've seen a little bit of her good side, like being an artist, but it's not enough. If there's another character who's just as artistic as her, it has to be Beth. I'm hoping that through Beth, we'll see a more sympathetic and good side of her. What do you think? Yeah, could be. I've thought a lot about whether Beth has crossed paths with Jadis or not. There's a very good chance she has. The other thing is that we still have all the kids, all the survivors from the World Beyond. And the last we saw of Silas, Jadis kind of conscripted him into the CRM army. And I think those characters have more story to tell, too. I mean, a lot of them are still alive. They didn't all die. In fact, only one of them died, I think. Did any of... None of the 4 main ones did. A couple of the others, the side characters did. Anyway, so it's very possible that those characters will pop up somewhere, whether it's in another spin-off or Dead City or, you know, whatever the case may be. And if we get any backstory from them, Jadis could be there too. So, yeah, I agree. Just because she's dead, I don't think it's the last we'll see of her character. But, you know, moving forward, I think it would all be in flashback. But I wouldn't mind that. I think it would be really interesting to see what else she's been doing and what other characters she's crossed paths with. I think that would be a really fun way to tie everything together. So I hope you're right. It would be interesting if Beth kind of knew about her art, or if they had any kind of conversation about their art. That would be really interesting, actually. So yeah, I agree. All right, guys, that is all the questions that I have for right now. I'm sure we'll get more. Even if I don't, I'm going to try to start doing some posts where maybe I go back and rewatch an episode and talk about it in more detail based on what we know now. I don't have a ton of time, so I can't promise I'll be able to do that every week, but I will do the best that I can. As far as we know, Daryl Dixon Season 2 is coming in June, I believe, June or July. So we've got a couple of months to wait, but that's okay. We'll have plenty of stuff to talk about until then, and if anyone's doing rewatches, let us know if you notice anything from earlier episodes that we can talk about, because I think that there's been a lot of things in earlier episodes that we didn't necessarily catch on to because we just didn't know as much as we know now, so it didn't jump out at us. And so I love to hear when people are rewatching and things jump out at them that didn't the first time, because yeah, you might as well share those, because if it didn't jump out for you the first time, it probably didn't jump out for a lot of people the first time. So yeah, anyway, but I will be back and I will be around, and keep sending me in your questions and your requests, and I will do my best to answer them or to look into them, just depending on how much time I have. All right, everyone have a great weekend. Bye.